Experiencing content. I hope this microphone is loud enough because I have a fan in my room now because it's too fucking hot. So we're just going to pretend like that is not making a lot of noise in the background. I won't find out until this is up on YouTube because then, you know, it'll be too late and I can't really do anything about it because I'm lazy. But that's alright. Anyways, I was not super compelled to make a new video, mostly because A, I didn't really have anything to talk about, B, E3 has been done to death and this year's wasn't particularly great. In fact, it was actually pretty bad, all things considered. I also did a predictions video and I basically nailed all of it, and I don't really feel like making another video being like, guess what, I fucking called all of it, boom! But I did totally nail all of that shit, if you were wondering. Anyways, not that these videos are supposed to be chronological, but they do sort of technically track my life in a way, but that's not the point. The point of these videos is to talk about stuff about video games and experience some content. So, I've been playing 2 games because I recently got my PS4 back. Long story short, I didn't have it for a couple of months. I finally got it back, and there were 2 games I were particularly interested in playing once I had it back in my possession. One of which was Nioh, or as I like to call it, Nioh, which is this Team Ninja 1600s era Japanese samurai yokai demon Dark Souls clone thing. And I hate to even call it a clone because they did take a lot of the basic structure of that game, but they really sort of added upon it in some interesting ways, the most important which is combat. It really has this awesome Team Ninja, Bayonetta, added sense of combat mechanics that make it a lot more complex than Dark Souls, which was already sort of like this weird song and dance you were playing with. Lock-on versus no lock-on, giant enemies versus, regular-sized enemies, groups of enemies, different types of weapons and magic, and that whole shield and sword or Bloodborne gun and whip or whatever. That's sort of like Song of Death. The Dance of Death. And Nioh does this interesting thing, and this is the first major topic, as you can tell from the title of the video. There is this real flow that happens in Nioh where you are... I don't want to use second person, but I definitely felt this way. That game seems very designed to get you into a certain gameplay rhythm, and you just get zoned out, and you are completely zen. Because initially it's like, okay, health, stamina bar. I can see the enemy's health and their stamina bar. Those are the things I have to track. So I'm going to kill that other person using one of 3 stances: high, medium, low. You know, quick, regular, slow, or really damaging, regular, and then not that damaging. So not only am I having to track 2 different people's health and stamina bars, me and the opponent, I have to track what stance I'm in. So you're constantly, checking those things while you're also engaging in combat, which is already, more than Dark Souls, because you're really just focused on, what's he gonna do, what am I gonna do? Okay, this, it's there's more to it, because you can definitely tell when the enemy is in a certain stance, and you can definitely tell when it's, time to go in, because they're, low on stamina, and you can, break their guard and go in for, a mega, not a mega combo if you wanted to, but just like a visceral attack or whatever they call them now. And then it adds to it because then it's you can key pulse, which is a weird active reload from Gears of War, where it's you can gain back your stamina in interesting ways based upon the way you sort of build your skill tree. None of which I'm showing in this video because I pulled this video off from YouTube of random gameplay, so I'm not skilled enough as an influencer to bother to edit together exactly what I'm talking about. But when you play the game, you'll know. So you can like build out your skill tree in interesting and cool ways, where it's like you can pick whichever weapon you want to use, and then in it it's like, oh, do you want to like gain more stamina using your key pulse, or do you want to do it while rolling out of the way? So then you can like gain your stamina back by like backing out of combat or like rolling out of the way, or like rushing in, which is like cool because in Bloodborne it was like you being aggressive was how you got it, but in this it's like you can choose how you want to sort of get your stamina back. And there's also different ways where it's like you can change what stance you're in, so it's like you have to remember that you're in medium, and then when you're going in and you need more at the end of a combo, you can switch to high, and then you can do it again and switch to low, and hopefully those things work, because sometimes you're in the wrong stance and it's a little too slow and you get hit while you're trying to like piece together these like different stances and combos to gain that momentum back into your key. And all of that, it's like there's just this really good flow and rhythm to like fighting people one after the other, where you're constantly like in this like muscle memory of like making that stuff work and click. And it gets even more complicated because sometimes levels, like, they'll give you different types of enemies, so it's not like you're fighting like a skeleton guy over and over. You can just sort of go, okay, I know how to beat him very efficiently. It'll like give you like different waves and patterns of like big, small, flying, you know, ranged, melee, aggressive, not aggressive. Like it definitely makes you sort of like play outside of your head. It's hard to explain, but like there are definitely times when you've been playing a video game, I know this for a fact, and you've been playing for so long you like totally forget you're playing and you're just like sucked into the TV. And you're like, oh, what time is it? I missed a meal. That happens to me all the time. And Neo was definitely one of those games where it was like nothing else mattered except for like me like completely just being zen and in the zone while I was like mastering this level and just like trying to go as far as possible without hitting a shrine, and just collecting all of the souls or whatever they call it, Amarita. And that to me is fascinating because it is really hard to design a game to pull that off effectively. And I don't even think most games like do it consciously. Like Tetris is one of those games where it's like you just forget that your hands are moving Tetraminos, and you're just like you're in Tetris. Like it is like that is the most like outside of my brain I've ever been. It's almost like taking drugs. You're just completely not even focused. It's like you could just be like listening to a podcast and paying attention to that, and that's how I get like my highest scores in puzzle games. It's like it is all just subconscious, just like you're not even paying attention, and that is like really, that's like bliss to me. And the other game I've been playing, which also has something that it's very hard to design a game around, is Horizon Zero Dawn, which is really great. Neo's great as well. These are really awesome PS4 exclusives that really make that console slightly better than an Xbox One. Oh, I said it! I'm so sorry. I've been an Xbox guy since 2005 or 6. But Jesus Christ, man, like, why aren't these games coming to Xbox? Anyways, I know Sony gave money to Team Ninja and to From Software and their first parties and stuff, but like, Microsoft, what are you doing? Anyways, Horizon Zero Dawn. We're going to talk about a loop. Gameplay loops are something that I was not privy to until recent years, where people would actually write about it, because I feel like we're getting to a point in games writing where like you can talk about like mechanics in that way. Like you can compare games and their different sort of gameplay loops, and it's not quite apples and oranges anymore, where I feel like before, like 10, 15 years ago, it was like, this game's sound is good, 9 out of 10. This game's graphics are good, 8 out of 10. That's a combined total of 8.5 out of 10. Like that was just how we reviewed games. And now I'm very well aware that there are a lot of games that have really tight, addictive gameplay loops, where in Horizon or Far Cry 3 it was like, I'm going to go hunting and get distracted. Then I'm going to collect the pelts or the skins or the bones and turn that into like a bigger backpack to hold more stuff. So when I do the next bandit camp or hideout or whatever base, that makes it like easier to do certain skills. Then I can level up and put more points into that skill that I like, stealth for instance, and then that'll allow me to be stealthier to kill more animals, and that's just this loop. And that's what you do. It's like you just live for the loop. You just live to level up and upgrade your backpack of crap and just get more stuff and complete all the side quests, and that is like your loop. And that is something that you can sort of aim to accomplish and hope it happens and hope it all sort of lines up, because there are a lot of games where they sort of intentionally want you to do a bunch of stuff like you know, build a village in Fallout 4, but I'm not interested in that. So I'm not going to do that. So there's this, like, part of the game that I will never do because I just don't care. But when it's Horizon, everything is about your hunting skills and the weapons you have and the items you have, and, like, everything is always attuned to that. So obviously there are missions and there's story and there's different side quests and errands and all that stuff, but it all comes back to that loop. They all want you to complete that loop of just, like, completing things and killing things and collecting things and upgrading yourself to be more efficient at killing and collecting, and it just becomes a cycle where you're constantly doing a bunch of core things over and over, and they all sort of blend in, not even blend into themselves, but like it's literally a circle where it just sort of keeps you going in that circle of completing one thing to the next, 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 because it all adds to each other. And there are certain games that I love that don't have that loop. Super Meat Boy, you play the levels, you beat the levels, you play more levels, they get harder. That's it. There is no loop. You're playing Super Meat Boy. But that game is so fucking well designed and so much fun that, like, it doesn't need a loop because it's not that kind of game. But when you're playing a big open world RPG thing like Horizon, having that loop is risky, but it is so fucking worth it when it works. And that's definitely, like, something I've been thinking more and more about, and maybe I'll do more videos on this, but, like, I really like the loop in Far Cry 3, and that, like, I did that game to death, and when I got to Far Cry 4, I was sort of used to that loop. I was used to that collecting and killing and completing, and the map and the story and, like, none of that stuff was as good to me. Like, it just wasn't as interesting. So all I had to sort of rely on was that loop, and it got sort of tiresome, which really sucked. And I also don't think that game's, like, open world map was sort of great for being really stealthy in the jungles. It was more like, have a ball with flying and driving, and I wasn't sort of like my thing. And then when I got to Primal, I was definitely more interested in that game, and so the loop sort of came back, and I actually beat that game. But it's definitely interesting to see how, like, that sort of stuff plays into sequels, and how much new versus how much old you sort of bring back with the franchise. And I even want to think more about this in terms of multiplayer, because something like Halo 2 multiplayer, it definitely had a really fun loop in single player where you would just sort of, like, you clearly got to a section in a level. I'm just thinking of this off the top of my head now. This isn't even prepared, so this is probably going to go longer than I planned. You got to this, like, little section in a level in single player. There'd be a bunch of enemies. You'd figure out what kind of enemies you take out first, or how you sort of approach that, and what guns you had, and you'd kill them, and you sort of trade out your guns, and you'd go to the next thing, and you would sort of keep doing that on repeat. So it was this constant, like, upkeep of, like, what guns do I have, how much ammo, where am I going next, do I want to get into this sort of vehicle, and it was just a constant, like, planning and executing, planning and executing. It was just, like, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, where there'd be these nice, like, quiet moments, and then loud moments, and it was sort of just, like, ebb and flow, up and down. That was, like, its sort of loop. Not that it's a literal shape of a loop, but you know what I mean. And then multiplayer was this really nice flow, this really nice rhythm where it was just like gun, grenade, melee, and it was this rock, paper, scissors, so it was this constant, like, running around the map, collecting the power-up weapons, knowing where you were going, knowing where enemies would sort of go, and you sort of cycle the map, and it was, like, this nice flow of, like, okay, like, how far away am I from that person? Should I engage in shooting them first? Maybe trying to get the grenade right? Do I just sort of sneak up or run in to grab the melee? Like, how do I want to approach that? And you'd sort of, like, it was just this weird, perfect multiplayer loop. And that was, like, you can completely just get into a rhythm with that game. In the same way that I play Call of Duty, and, like, even though I'll die 20 times in a game or whatever, the second I respawn, I, like, know where I want to go, I know what I want to do, I know what guns I want to sort of, like, work to get upgrades for, and it was just that, like, you would just really bounce back. And what I think is so interesting is maybe why I didn't like Halo 4 as much, and why 5 is a very different game in a lot of ways, is because, like, just the basic, like, way those games work, and the maps, it's like, you weren't doing that, like, fun ivory tower run from up to down and around that map, because it was like, oh, you know, there's, like, a power weapon over there now. And I was like, what? Oh, now I just gotta go over there now? That's what I'm doing? I can't just, like, know that rockets are gonna spawn underneath the little waterfall at this time? It was like, no, everyone just go over here, there's a power weapon. I was like, okay, I guess I'll do that. And then in Halo 5, it's like, oh yeah, you can like aim down sights now. Like you can just sort of like stand still and just like aim down sights and like creep around corners. And it's like, okay, that's the thing I can do now. That wasn't necessarily like what I was doing in Halo 2, which was sort of just more run and gun. You know, and Gears of War is more pop and stop, and Counter-Strike is pray and spray. I guess you can change things up, and now there's like a jump in the air and ground pound thing, and there's like a running shoulder sprint thing, and I really like Halo 5, but like it is just a different sort of like, there's a different flow to it, there's a different rhythm, and there's a definite different loop. And I guess it depends on what sort of maps and what modes and stuff, but it's definitely interesting to think about games in that sort of light more. Because again, some games don't have that, and some games do. Like Gone Home, there isn't any of that. You're playing the game. Super Meat Boy, again, you're just playing Super Meat Boy. You're just playing each level, and hopefully you get better. Like those games are more interested in like teaching you mechanics of like platforming. You know, like Super Meat Boy or Mario, it's like, okay, like we're gonna introduce things, and you're just gonna get better at them, and that'll be how you get through the game. It's like, oh, I'm learning, I'm getting better. This is fun. I like accomplishing these goals. But with certain games, always be thinking about that loop and think about how you sort of play them and how well they do with like allowing you to get into a good groove. So yeah, Dark Souls and Neo and Horizon, definitely those are awesome games that sort of accomplish that thing. And I don't know if that's really well designed. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because they are. But maybe there are some games that just sort of accidentally do that, where they weren't intended to be played that way, and you just sort of figure it out. Like, I feel like Crackdown 1 was a game where they sort of like, let's put in all this awesome stuff, and let's have them, you know, just let players have a ball. And like, I definitely was like, oh, I'm just gonna like jump from building to building, collecting agility orbs, and like just completely make my own system of how to do this mission. So there you go. Accidental, unintentional, intentional. Fun ways to think about video games. This is a great long ramble that went way too long. I did not initially plan on talking about any of the second half of this video, including Halo, but I'm glad I did. So, thank you for watching and experiencing some content with me. I hope you will join me in several weeks when I feel like making another video. Hopefully I'll get inspired by something else I play. I'm planning on playing Prey next. Hopefully that'll give me some thing to rant or rave about, because I'm really interested in that. But I'm not interested in giving Bethesda any of my hard-earned cash. So maybe I'll buy that used and sort of spite them. But what kind of message does that send to the developers that I like their game, but not their publisher enough to give them money? Anyways, I'll wrestle with that later. Hopefully it's on sale. Follow me on Twitter at JaredRusso, and thank you for watching, yet again.